Roy Orbison mystery finally solved and isn't good. What if the very voice that taught the world to feel was itself forged in hidden fires? Long before, oh, pretty woman, ricocheted from every transistor. A skinny, bespectacled boy from Vernon, Texas was already carrying storms in both his lungs and his heart. Today we're opening the last sealed files on that life. Some uplifting, many unsettling, a few bordering on unbelievable. Follow every note to its source and you'll find the same refrain. Genius always charges interest, and the bill usually arrives after the encore. Roy Kelton Orbison entered the Great Depression during its dying gasp. Born on April 23, 1936. The Orbison home sat behind the town feed mill. Coal dust floated like gray snow, and most dinners stretched a single tin of beans. Roy's father, Orbie Lee, worked nights drilling water wells. His mother, Nadine, added pennies to the family jar by clerking at the local café. They couldn't afford new clothes, but they could afford imagination. And when little Roy asked for a guitar at 6, Orbie Lee traded 2 days' wages and a pair of work gloves to buy a battered harmony acoustic from a pawn shop. Radio became Roy's second household. KWKC Amarillo blasted Hank Williams through the window slats at dawn, while evening broadcasts piped in Bing Crosby's satin baritone. Roy absorbed them both, plus the full-throated gospel that rattled Wink's tin-roofed church each Sunday. By 8, he had a regular slot singing "You Are My Sunshine" on KVWC, standing atop a wooden Coca-Cola crate so the mic could find him. And whenever a song ended, he'd stare at the on-air bulb as if waiting for it to glow again. Proof that the world hadn't forgotten him between verses. Move-up day came in 1951, when the family relocated to Wink, a drilling boomtown famous for tumbleweeds and trouble. Roy called it the worst place on earth. Except the music, he formed the Wink Westerners, a high school band that swapped geometry homework for after-game sock hops. Their set list mixed country standards, blues shuffles, and the occasional Glenn Miller swing chart. Anything the crowd would two-step to. Roy's voice could already climb into a liquid falsetto, though he kept the high notes brief, worried classmates might laugh. They didn't. They just stared. Memphis in 1956 felt like a comet streak. Sun Records, the same neon cradle that rocked Elvis, Cash, and Jerry Lee. Roy cut 4 rockabilly singles. Ooby Dooby landed modestly. The rest fizzled. Producer Sam Phillips offered standard advice. Turn up the swagger, turn down the hurt. Roy tried. The record still sounded like a kid stretching leather shoes 2 sizes too small. Off mic, a darker rumor flickered. At 16, he'd endured experimental sinus surgeries to fix a crushing breathing problem. Operations that may have widened his nasal cavity, altered resonance chambers, and left scar tissue just thick enough to reshape airflow. No hospital ever confirmed it, and medical ethics in 1950s Texas were, let's be kind, elastic. But once you've heard that lunar eclipse falsetto, the rumor sticks like tar. Whether miracle or mishap, it set Roy apart the way a lightning scar sets apart an oak. Fate changed labels before it changed tunes. Producer Fred Foster lured Roy to Monument Records in 1960, and more important, told him to sing how you feel, not how radio feels. The result? Only the Lonely. The track opened with a heartbeat drum, swelled with a do-it-yourself orchestra of nodding Nashville session men. And then Roy's voice rose, that spectral glide from chest to head to somewhere beyond. Disc jockeys rewound the acetate 3 times just to be sure the pitch meter hadn't broken. Listeners didn't just hear heartbreak, they felt it physically, like altitude in their ears. Hit followed hit. Running scared, crying, in dreams, each one an aria disguised as pop, each one mapping the coastline of sorrow. Yet success never muted Roy's introversion. He found solace in anonymity. Black suits, black hair dye, black wraparound shades. The glasses hid stage lights that triggered migraines, yes. But they also hid a chronic shyness that left him nauseated before every curtain. Elvis called him the best white singer on earth. Roy responded with a blush and a mumble. Love, when it arrived, was Technicolor. 16-year-old Claudette Frady met Roy at a Texas drive-in, wearing a red scarf that fluttered like a flag of surrender. He married her in 1957, wrote Claudette for the Everly Brothers, then reclaimed it for himself. She toured, she modeled, she danced in the wings while Roy coaxed theaters into hushed submission. Yet the road breeds rumors, and their marriage weathered tabloid thunder, alleged infidelities, long silences, parking lot arguments witnessed by bored stagehands. They split, reconciled, vowed a fresh start. June 6, 1966, Gallatin, Tennessee. Claudette's Triumph motorcycle clipped a flatbed truck on Old Hickory Lake Road. She died before the ambulance doors could close. Roy fielded the phone call in a motel lobby and made a sound witnesses struggled to describe, half sob, half inverse yodel. That night, he donned the black suit, finished a show in Birmingham, left the applause ringing, then locked himself in the green room and shattered a dressing table mirror with his fist. Pieces of glass stayed in his palm for 3 days. He said they reminded him that pain had shape. Grief rarely travels alone. September 14, 1968, Hendersonville. A propane tank in Roy's remodeled home ignited, swallowing the 2-story frame house in minutes. 10-year-old Roy Duane and 6-year-old Anthony King were upstairs. Firefighters fought smoke too thick to navigate. Both boys perished, their mother already a memory. Roy was in England when the telegram arrived. He collapsed so hard the hotel porter thought he'd fainted from drink. Younger son Wesley survived only because he'd begged to stay at his grandparents' farm. At the funeral, Roy stood motionless. Black suit, darker shades, till the pastor said Amen, then vanished into a Cadillac with windows tinted darker than federal law allowed. Private diaries uncovered decades later reveal a man orbiting despair. He wrote of white-painted hotel ceilings that echo my thoughts too loudly, confessed that he'd memorized the dosage chart for sleeping pills, contemplated leaving music for woodworking, something quiet, something that couldn't collapse in flames. Yet melodies kept intruding, like birds that refused to migrate. Salvation arrived, wearing a German accent. Barbara Velhoven, a 17-year-old music business intern, met Roy backstage in Leeds, 1968. She asked one question, "How are you really?" and waited for the real answer. Months later, they married in Nashville. Barbara became wife, manager, nurse, cheer squad, and firewall against the industry's more predatory instincts. She scheduled his press only on good voice days, engineered tours with rest gaps, and kept him stocked with nicotine gum when doctors banned cigarettes. The 1970s were a blur of near misses. Stadium rock drowned his operatic ballads. AM playlists favored 3-minute optimism. Roy still charted overseas. Penny Arcade went #1 in Australia. But U.S. promoters dismissed him as a nostalgia act. He developed stage fright so severe he sometimes rehearsed in darkness to acclimate his eyes. Then chest pains hit. January 18, 1978. St. Francis Hospital, Honolulu. Triple bypass surgery. Surgeons later said the arteries looked tired of carrying genius around. Recovery meant 6 months off. Roy lasted 3 before sneaking into a Nashville studio at dawn, tape rolling while the janitor mopped. A turning tide began in the most unlikely vehicle. David Lynch's 1986 film Blue Velvet. Lynch threaded In Dreams through a scene of suburban menace so hypnotic that millions of moviegoers Shazam searched before Shazam existed. College DJs rediscovered Orbison. New wave bands cited him as proto-goth influence. K.D. Lang cut a torchy, crying duet that won a Grammy, pulling Roy back into the limelight he never courted. Then came the phone call that rewired rock history. April 1988. George Harrison needed a B-side, Tom Petty had a half-finished song, and Jeff Lynne knew a studio in less than an hour. They dragged Bob Dylan for good measure and invited Roy to jam. 5 acoustic guitars, 1 tape machine, no agenda, except magic. They called themselves the Traveling Wilburys, each taking a pseudonym. Roy chose Lefty, nodding to hero Lefty Frizzell. Handle with Care was supposed to hide on a Harrison single. The label heard it and demanded an album. Within weeks, Roy was touring Europe to audiences larger than his 1960s peak, marveling that teenagers now lined up for autographs alongside their gray-haired parents. Behind the curtain, tolls mounted. Chain-smoked Marlboros rasped his lungs, fan meet and greets stretched into midnight. Cardiologist voicemails remained unplayed. Roy was finishing Mystery Girl, a solo album loaded with songs Lynn called Cathedrals of Ache. Session logs show he sometimes sang 12 takes in a row, refusing water so the grain stayed in his upper register. Engineers begged him to rest. He grinned, said, "Borrowed time's still time." December 4th, 1988. Akron, Ohio. Roy played what would be his final concert, sprinting through "Oh, Pretty Woman," as if afraid someone might lower the curtain early. Fans recall him uncharacteristically animated, strutting, finger-snapping, soaking up an ovation 4 minutes long. 2 days later, he flew home to Hendersonville, spent the afternoon flying model airplanes with country legend Gene Shepard, ate his mother's blackberry cobbler, then collapsed at 10:50 p.m. Paramedics worked, the ER clock ticked, and at 11:54 p.m., the Big O signed off. 52 years, 1,000 heartbreaks, one last hush. Reporters labeled it sudden, but his youngest son called it the moment the debt came due. Barbara buried him beside Claudette, her sons, and a lifetime of unrealized lullabies. She inherited the catalog, built a licensing empire, and spent nights re-listening to outtakes, insists she can still hear him breathing between syllables. Death, however, proved negotiable. In 2014, to mark the 25th anniversary of Mystery Girl, Roy's sons completed an unfinished demo called "The Way Is Love," layering their own harmonies around their father's isolated vocal, technology stitching past to present. 4 years later, Bass Hologram projected a life-size Roy onto global stages, backed by live orchestras. For some fans, it was transcendence. For others, a seance with tickets. One critic wrote, "It feels like staring at a ghost who doesn't know he's dead." The estate defended the tour, arguing it lets new generations feel the tremor of that impossible voice. Privately, insiders wrestled with the creep factor, but pointed to ticket sales that sometimes eclipsed legacy acts still breathing. Then, artificial intelligence arrived with outstretched palms. Summer 2024, Universal Music Group unveiled SoundLab's Mic Drop, a plugin that clones an artist's timbre so producers can audition vocals before paying for a feature. They touted safeguard contracts. Artists must opt in, estates negotiate royalties. Yet fine print spooked purists. What prevents a future mixtape featuring Orbison duetting with a meme rapper? Fan-made AI Roy tracks already litter YouTube, racking views faster than official uploads. The family keeps lawyers on speed dial, but they're swatting mosquitoes in a hurricane. Audio forensics can spot deep fakes today. Tomorrow's version may glide past scanners the way Roy's falsetto once glided past reason. Ethical debates ignite comment sections. Is posthumous recreation tribute or exploitation? Does technology revive the art or resurrect the artist without consent? A hologram raises eyebrows. An AI voice raises goose flesh. We sampled his pain for decades. Now we sample his very DNA of sound. Strip away the gadgetry, and the central enigma sharpens. Here was a man who gave the world his inside voice. The voice people normally reserve for prayers or final phone calls. He endured poverty, migraines, surgeries that may have rewired his breathing, a motorcycle tragedy, a house fire, stage fright that felt like drowning, and a heart ticking too fast beneath black silk. Yet each time grief kicked him down a ravine, he wrote a melody sturdy enough to drag listeners out with him. Was that superhuman range divine gift, medical mutation, or cosmic bargain? Did those tinted glasses conceal fired nerves, or simply shield shy eyes from flashbulbs? We'll never pin every answer. But we do know that when Roy Orbison opened his mouth, the room stopped breathing, because he was giving us the last of his. He bled so audiences could feel safely. He kept singing long after life snatched nearly everything worth singing about. And now, decades later, technology wants one more encore. Maybe 10 more. The mystery is solved, only in the sense that we finally grasp how steep his cost was. The bigger question hangs for us. Should we keep withdrawing from a bank account that closed the night his heart gave out? Whether you applaud the hologram, Cherish the vinyl or hit mute on every AI fake. Remember the echo. Roy Orbison broke our hearts so we wouldn't have to break our own. And that's a debt no clone can ever repay. The Roy Orbison mystery finally solved and isn't good.